Hi guys, welcome to the Katie Halper Show. We have a great show for you. We'll be talking to Becky Bond, former senior organizer for the Bernie Sanders for President campaign. Then we're going to be talking to Dayen, author of Chain of Title, and he'll be telling us about the most exciting part of Wikileaks, which, spoiler alert, has nothing to do with Hillary Clinton. And this is so exciting. Finally, we can announce that we have a Patreon set up. Go to patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show and support us for very little money. You can get extra goodies, bonus content, videos. And this week, I will be reading to you an Ezra Klein article about Tim Kaine's feminism, which has nothing to do with feminism at all. It's fascinating. So check us out there on Patreon. Bye. Hello, and welcome to the Katie Halper Show. I'm your host, Katie Halper, with...
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Gabe Pacheco. I don't know why I ask what's up, everybody. It's not like anybody can hear me or respond. Unless you guys start live tweeting during the show, and then I promise you I will check my phone.
Yeah. You see, Gabe, you went from 0 to 100. You were in the negative, and you filled up your glass.
To the brim. To the tippity top.
To the tippity top with... Excuse me, positivity. I got so verklempt from that. I'm really moved. We have a great show for you guys today. We're going to be talking to Becky Bond. We love Becky Bond. She pounds a table. Whoa, she's a table pounder.
Yeah, she's emphatic. Whenever she's in here,
right?
she is always rapping the table with a gavel or a cane.
Yeah.
She's our Judge Judy.
Our Judge Judy, yeah. Becky Bond is our Judge Judy. She's the Judge Judy of the left.
Hey.
Hey, Becky. Welcome.
Yes.
Becky, you wrote a book with Zach Exley called Rules for Revolutionaries, and it's coming out November 18th, and we definitely want to have you back and talking about it.
Yeah, we're excited to come back. It's basically after the election when you're like, now what?
Right.
We're going to be starting a conversation about what is the kind of organizing that we need to achieve the solutions that are as radical as the problems that we face. And Zach and I are really excited about about you reading the book and about coming on the show to talk about it with you and your audience.
Great. Yeah. Well, we're really excited. How are you?
What's going on?
How's it going?
It's, the country is sort of falling apart, and, we'll be relieved if Hillary Clinton ends up president. But other than that, I'm doing okay.
Becky Bond, what's up? It's Gabe Pacheco. I hear you. I just want to be just optimistic right now. There's no way that Hillary Clinton's going to lose. So let's all just get out there and vote, and that's it. That's all we can do.
Are we correct? Is Gabe's optimism?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think what's going to happen on November 9th is we're all going to feel like we dodged a bullet, and that Donald Trump is not going to be the next president, and hopefully he'll have been beaten by an extremely wide margin. And then we all have to come to grips with the fact that we've gone a step backward from where we were under Barack Obama, and those of us who are fighting for more radical solutions to the big problems that we face, we're going to have to get back to work.
A step backwards. Can
Two
you
steps
elaborate?
forward and one step back sounds like the Paula Abdul song, Opposites Attract.
Yes,
Thank you for making me think about that song again, Becky.
Yeah, but Edison, so Becky, what can you elaborate on that kickball change of a shuffle, of a back step that you just alluded to?
Well, right. Without further torturing the choreography metaphor, I think where we are right now is, most Americans are pulling really hard for Hillary Clinton to win, and people like me want Clinton to win by a wide margin because we really want to show the country and the world that that the United States is not going to allow anyone like Donald Trump to get even close to the Oval Office. But if you set that aside, and that's our important task for right now, if you take a look at Hillary Clinton's record, she is to the right of Barack Obama on some important issues that a lot of us care deeply about. She is, very, very hawkish, and she wants a much tougher line on Syria, for example. It's going to be much quicker to bomb another country and get us into another war of choice in the Middle East. She will, arguably be worse than Barack Obama has been on regulating Wall Street. And if we don't push back really hard, we're in danger of going backwards in terms of who we have at Treasury who are regulating, the bankers that already have fleeced Americans, once during this administration. And there's a host of other issues where Clinton is just, a lot of us are dissatisfied with how President Obama followed through on the promises of his run, and now we're actually going to be starting, from another. Starting from behind, from where Obama was. So we really have our work cut out for us.
Wow. See, that's what I love about Becky, because she is totally honest. She both says we need to defeat Trump. We need to not just defeat him, but crush him. But she also, I'm going to talk to you, Becky, because we're talking to you instead of she. But Becky, you also say that that you have major reservations with Clinton, and that you think she's less, she's to the right of Obama on lots of issues. So I have two questions for you. One is for our listeners out there who are skeptics, who are either in safe states and plan to vote third party, or maybe even people who aren't going to vote at all. When you say that we need to defeat him, you're not just talking about in the Electoral College. You're talking about in the popular vote, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I'm talking about narrowing the margin or pulling off some, surprising defeats of him in states that are normally quite red. Donald Trump, it's not voting. I mean, the protest vote in this election is really to protest the fact that Donald Trump is in this at all. And the only way to cast a protest vote against Donald Trump, whether you're in a battleground state or a safe state, is to vote for Hillary Clinton. And I gotta be quite honest, I don't like the fact that I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm going to do it, because the only way to really defeat Donald Trump and to show the country that his brand of, nativist, racist, misogynist politics, can't make it in America is to make sure that he's humiliated at the polls. And that's not just in states like Pennsylvania, that's in states like Arizona too.
Right. So you're someone who does political organizing. How does that translate, right? So let's say Donald Trump is really defeated, right? What does that do? Does that mean that the Koch brothers don't invest in ex-politician, ex-candidate who is Trump-like in ABC? Like, how does it actually happen on a concrete level, not just symbolically?
Well, I think what's going to happen is if Trump comes close in some states, he's going to embolden a bunch of people in his grassroots to think we can win the next one. And either they'll start running for office or they'll work for someone running on a Trump-like platform for office. And so, Trump supporters, we don't want people who supported Trump to see running a campaign like Trump's as a path to power, right? Because they could say, well, if only they had invested in a ground game, right, Trump could be the president. We don't want them to see that. We want to see Trump go down so far that people don't see Trump-like candidates as the answer in 2018, because otherwise we're going to be playing a game of whack-a-mole trying to defeat these really, really bad guys instead of doing what we want to do, which is put up really progressive candidates in 2018, candidates that are going to they're going to shift the balance of power in the Democratic Party by saying, hey, we need universal health care. Hey, we need immigration reform, and we need it now. Hey, we don't just want some, empowerment zones in cities. We want to dismantle structural racism. We want to disarm the police. We want to be fighting for the candidates to represent our beliefs, not just having another, election where we have to spend all of our money and all of our time defeating someone who's, abhorrent, and in the process helping someone get elected who doesn't share our values.
Right.
So it sounds like the status quo would in fact want to create more sort of crackpot flamboyant candidates that are Trumpish to have in stark relief. Yeah. Like, hey, look at us. We're the common sense party.
We're not overtly racist, homophobic, and sexist.
Right. So
right.
vote for Assad.
The bar is so low. Yeah,
so
that's you're some kind of evil genius. Are you a political consultant for the Republican Party, Gabe? Just on the down low.
Look, if our Patreon doesn't start kicking in a couple more shekels, I might have to go to the dark side. Whoever's paying.
Yeah, we have
I'm
a
a
Patreon
hired gun.
now. We're hired pacifist guns. Hired bullet-free guns. No, but Gabe, I think you raise a really important point, and obviously you do too, Becky, which is that when we were watching the vice presidential debate, right? Because with Trump, I have to admit, it's very hard for me to focus on what he's saying. I'm just looking at the facial expressions, at his turn of phrase. He's like a rapper. He's very good with words, his nicknames. But when Pence was debating Tim Kaine, I have to say I was reminded of how scary Republicans are. And I have to say, I was reminded of how really right-wing Republicans make it so easy for Democrats to just be slightly decent, okay-ish on certain issues. Like, I was really feeling Tim Kaine, and I was able to forget that I don't like his stuff on abortion, that I don't like that he doesn't want to repeal the Hyde Amendment, that he's for the TPP, because Mike Pence is such such a typical real politician as opposed to Trump, who's an entertainer.
Mike Pence wants women to pay for the funerals of the miscarriages,
that's
true.
Of the miscarriage ghosts.
Miscarriage ghosts. Oh my gosh.
I know. It's a sorry state that we're in, and I think it's when I think back to the primary, and I think about how much money was spent, on the left. Not even on the left, just among Democratic Party aligned institutions trying to defeat Bernie. Issue groups, right? Groups that cared about a certain issue got involved and lined up really early, whether it was the unions or the women's groups lining up with Clinton, and then spending money from progressives like you and me who donated to them, or dues paying union members, and they used that money to beat up on Bernie and try and get him out of the race, when in reality, what if they had actually been beating up on the real bad guys, right? Trump and Cruz and all these guys, if that money had really followed, who was worse on our issues, as opposed to what do we need to do to neutralize Bernie so that we get our friend, Hillary Clinton back in the White House. So it is a problem that we have, with how our party institutions and our party is aligned. They just want 50% of the vote plus one vote in order to win. And so you have a situation where I think a lot of people were hoping for Trump, right? A lot of Democratic activists were hoping Trump would be the opposition because they saw him as being easier to defeat. But in reality, what happened was that when as a country we allowed Trump to win the Republican nominee for the presidency, we really let a genie out of the bottle. And that was, we lost a lot right then, because then we allowed him to define the next 6 months of the race and change, the sort of the tenor of what's possible. And I think we're gonna have to be contending with that for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Becky, I think for forever. How do we go back to civics after this? How do we go back to a world where politicians have any statement they make tethered to reality? Trump is completely unaccountable. He can just say whatever he wants, and people clap, and that seems to be the template for, I guess, politics from now on. Unless you see an alternative.
It's weird, isn't it? The press and all this fact checking.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just like, what is this fascination with fact checking when he's lying all the time? It's like, shouldn't they just be going out and saying, "Oh my gosh, he's a fascist. The country is on the brink of collapse into fascism."
They should be
as opposed to
fascist
saying,
checking.
like, well, this
fascist checking.
76% untrue.
Right. Fast checking. FASCH. How you like that? You can use that, Becky.
Okay, I'll see if that works. But I mean, really, what are we? I mean, obviously, the media is usually culpable here,
right?
And they're going to need to have a moment, like we're going to have to decide, what's going to happen about that, and how do we go through another election, with the media as they are, currently constituted. And you had people like Les Moonves of CBS saying that, like, Trump's really good for business,
right.
When he's running in the primary. I hope he stays in,
Right.
And so I think the incentives are really, not aligned, obviously with little d democracy.
Right. I mean, I think that what's interesting is I think that the media has been quite critical of Trump, but they've given him so much free press. So it's not like they praised him, but they gave him free press, and he's a very charismatic person. That's like the most dangerous thing. If you gave Hillary Clinton a ton of free press, that may have hurt her, honestly. Let's be honest, right? She's not quite as charismatic as Trump.
I think there's something about it. I don't know if you read Brian Beutler in the New Republic. You should have him on your show. And I think his coverage of besides obviously this show and WBAI, his coverage of the presidential race has been, sort of the best. And that, he talked about, how the media is like, they criticize Trump, but it's in these on page 4 in these long analytical pieces.
Sure.
And, the majority of Americans, they don't see anything beyond the headline and the lead.
Right.
And that journalists had a duty to use the headline and the lead over and over and over again, right? So just to say over and over and over again, and bludgeon in the truth of what's really happening, which is that this is unprecedented, that this is a danger to democracy, that this candidate is, continually going beyond the pale, and that we are really in uncharted and dangerous territory. And that stuff is in the analytical pieces and in the think pieces, but it was not consistently in the headlines. And so the overall sense of the headline scanners, most Americans don't have time to sit around and read news on the internet because they're working 2 jobs. And so, this is the crisis which could have been fixed by journalists.
But
if
I
they
mean
had
more
just done their
in
job.
terms of TV, I guess. When I was talking about the coverage, like tons of free TV, even if they were saying something bad about him.
They're just covering their whole rallies. Right, of Trump, right, because it's bringing in the ratings. Exactly. But at a certain point, you just have to say whether you're a journalist or whether you're the military people that are giving Trump the intelligence briefings. I mean, what if the person that has to give the intelligence briefing to Trump, right, once he became the Republican nominee, in order to prepare them to take power in case they win, they get these classified intelligence briefings. What if the people were just like, no way, I'm not doing it. You could just fire me. I'm not going to do it. Right? Or how about the guy that controls or the woman that controls the programming? We're not going to go live to another one of these Trump hotels, another tour of one of his properties. What if people just started saying, I'm not going to do it? I mean, I can't imagine that. Can you imagine you're the intelligence officer who's briefing Donald Trump, classified, state of intelligence? How do they do that? How do you not say this is the point at which I just, I'm going to make my stand and quit. I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Well, they got a 401k.
Yeah.
They got kids they got to put through school. They got kids who need braces. For whatever reason, there's monetary incentives to just keep playing ball. And
just punch in those help Trump punch in those nuclear football codes when the time comes.
And you don't know who they don't know who the real Trump is. But I wanted to talk to your point about the press. It makes me think of Coca-Cola. We all know that Coca-Cola will give you diabetes and give you cavities, and it's not good for you in general. It might make you plump if you don't want to be plump.
Nothing wrong with plump. We just want you to be able to be whatever you want to look like.
But
if we like full figure, we like them, whatever.
But you see, Coca-Cola, the brand is everywhere. The brand is strong, yes. And in the same way, just seeing Trump's name over and over again, I think for a lot of people who don't have that free time to read more about him, just go, well, he's in the press. He's the dominant monkey right now, so that's who we're going to vote for. Or like that simply his name being everywhere is
or his face
gives him credibility.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's powerful. The Clinton name is a big brand too. I mean, I think, to be honest, I think that if the Democrats, were doing something to address income inequality in a real and material way for people, and they had some kind of plan to protect manufacturing jobs, to rebuild the infrastructure. I mean, all they can say is we're going to give you, an income tax credit, for this small thing, and you should be happy. This is how we're going to help. And so I think if the Democrats put something on the table, I mean, Donald Trump, he's lying when he says he's going to build beautiful factories and we're going to bring back manufacturing. He's lying about that. But if the Democrats actually were putting material benefits on the table for working people, and providing universal health care and other things, then no matter how big the Trump brand is, the guy wouldn't have a chance. It's just because the Democrats aren't helping, and so they're like, why not go with this guy, even if maybe he's kind of full of it.
Right.
Well, it seems like the Democrats like to talk about creating business through sort of disruptive entrepreneurship and any sort of new technologies, and all of that just sounds like you're going to put more robots out there taking my job. So I don't see anything in how the Democrats talk about making the economy stronger, helping working class people.
They also don't really have an answer, right, to Trump's make America great again, because their thing is America's already great. And what Bernie Sanders did do is he kind of spoke to the discontent, right, and income inequality. And I feel like Clinton doesn't really know how to speak to that. And she herself said in the Goldman Sachs speeches that she was a little bit out of touch because of her, economic situation. What do you think of that? And I just feel like Democrats haven't been able to pick up a kind of a PR line on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, the Clintons are in the 1%. I mean, when Clinton is making, tens of millions of dollars just for making speeches, between the time she left the State Department and the time, that she decided to run for office and didn't see how that might, be a problem, but some voters might have a problem with that. I mean, she is out of touch because money really insulates you from what's happening. But here's the thing, voters are smart. Voters aren't dumb. And voters aren't picking Trump because they're dumb. Some of them are picking Trump because they don't believe that Hillary Clinton is going to make real change in their lives, and I think that the Democratic Party has really just thinks voters are dumb, and in fact, Democratic Party operatives are putting pressure on people like the three of us all the time not to talk about the shortcomings of Clinton, even as we say people have to vote for her because they think that could. That could help stop. But in reality, I think the voters in this country are starved for an honest discussion of where we are and how complex it is and, what we need to do to get from, the world as it is and the world where we've won things that people really need. And to get back to Brian Beutler, who writes for the New Republic, he had another think piece recently where he talked about the fact that Democrats, look poised to, take the White House, probably take the Senate, and that Democrats needed to, quote, psychologically prepare themselves, unquote, to take the risks necessary to win material gains for, people in the United States who are hurting, right? The people that are forced to pay into Obamacare, but the plan that they get has a deductible that's so high that they can't go to the doctor, and yet they're having to pay, right. Maybe $1,000 a month. And so I think that that's sort of where we are right now. We need to have an honest conversation about how things are broken, that Democrats aren't delivering, for people who haven't seen their real wages, go up in 40 years, and all the economic gains after the financial crisis, went to the top earners in America and didn't go to the vast majority of Americans. And we just have to have a really honest conversation about what that is and what we need to do to get out of it. We need to raise benefits for people and make them real government benefits, not just tax credits. We need to raise taxes on the wealthy. We need to actually, do more than we're doing right now to combat climate change, and we need to have a real discussion about structural racism in this country if we're actually going to deal with income inequality, because those things are really linked. So anyway, so we have a tough job ahead of us, and I think the Democratic Party operatives suggesting that people like us shouldn't be having an honest discussion leads voters to think that the Democrats they don't even recognize the problems, how they're going to solve them. So might as well go with the other guy. He's a knucklehead, but maybe he'll shake things up. And that couldn't, a lot of people think that couldn't be worse than where they are right now. And that's the Democratic Party's fault for putting them in that position.
So we're actually helping the Democrats in a way because we're saying something that they will believe is honest because it's not just a talking point. Maybe if the three of us went on a speaking tour.
Well, I think that's right. Or maybe we should put you in charge of the DNC. I mean, they're looking for somebody, right? Yeah. It could be Jennifer Granholm, or it could be Katie Halper.
I think I'd
go Katie Halper.
Thank you. I'm gonna launch it. That's what the Patreon is actually for. It's not for the show. It's for my DNC chairwomanship. And Becky, so what can we get from Clinton between now? We don't have any leverage, do we? Because people are going to vote for her. What can we get her to commit to? I think that I have really mixed thoughts about the WikiLeaks stuff, and so I think privacy ought to be protected, and how it came out in a way that it was all dumped as opposed to a news organization, picking what's newsworthy and what's not. But for what has become public, I think what it's shown us is that the Clinton administration is going to be very transactional and that they react to pressure. And so in the absence of pressure, I think we'll have bad outcomes in terms of who gets put in charge of Treasury, who gets appointed to certain boards, what decisions are made on things like the Dakota Access Pipeline, drilling on public lands. But I think that if we actually are able to put pressure on the administration, which I think that we can right now on appointments, right? They're making thousands of decisions about who is actually going to be in charge of programs. Personnel policy, we need to do that. I think that
There's certain policies that we can put extreme pressure on the Clinton administration around, and I think basically once the election is done, that's when our job starts. She should get you and I have talked about this before. This is a shotgun wedding, so there's going to be no honeymoon, and we need to be ready to unleash, not after the inauguration, not 2 months after the inauguration, but right after the election. We have to turn towards pressuring the transition team and putting extreme heat on them so that they understand there will be very public pain, right, when they side with the Wall Street interests, when they side with the 1%. And we're going to have to be relentless.
Right. So we can, by pressuring her, in theory, right, and making her, I mean, I'm speaking in large brushstrokes, but for the people who say don't criticize her until after she wins, in a way, Go ahead.
I
mean, in a way, is the argument, the response to that, the retort to that, well, actually, we want to push her to do the right thing, to be more progressive, so she has to kind of come out as more progressive, and that'll actually help her win?
Yeah, I mean, like as soon as she's done running for president in 2016, she's going to start running in 2020.
Right.
And, there's going to be a bunch of Bernie supporters who are going to be fired up to support a primary challenge to a President Clinton. And so, she's going to need she's going to need to deliver, right, for the Democratic base once she gets in office, because that's what's going to happen. She's going to want to run again. And so what we can't do is wait until the midterm to be pushing on her, like we did with Obama, like we did with the first President Clinton. So I think that actually, we can win things and also help her be a better candidate in 2020 if she survives her primary challenge, and if she is the nominee of the Democrats in 2020 to go up against Paul Ryan. She is going to need a fired up base, and they're not going to be fired up if they didn't see her use her office, right, to benefit the American people. And so she, just like the Democrats, is going to have to get psychologically prepared to take the risks, right, necessary to actually deliver on real gains, right, for people who are hurting. That's going to materially change their lives in ways that they'll be able to see before the next election.
Yeah. So maybe some of us are engaging in a shotgun wedding, but there could also be a shotgun divorce. You hear that, Hillary? How you like that? And if you were proposing to Hillary Clinton, or let's say you were writing a prenup with Hillary, or whatever, you were married and you were negotiating, you did your shotgun wedding.
Yeah, I don't like where this is going. I don't think I can. I don't think I can go there.
I mean, just metaphor, Becky. Just let's suspend.
I don't
disbelief.
even metaphorically. So what's the question?
Okay.
Let's get to the question without the
all right,
icky,
fine. All right. I really like
metaphor.
but I like that. I'm married to Clinton. Let's say, okay. We had a shotgun wedding. We had a shotgun wedding, and then I'm like, listen, Hill.
Did you get a prenup?
Yeah. Maybe I'm working out the prenup, right? So what do I say? I say, Hillary, if you want this relationship to work, or else I'm bailing in 4 years, okay? If you want me to even think of staying with you for 4 years, you have to do what?
All marriages should have this
That's true.
Bail
Presidential
clause.
term bail clause, yeah.
Well, I think one of the things you asked for is use executive order to say that the family members of undocumented young people who have deportation relief under President Obama's executive order, that they should also have protection for deportation. That's an easy thing that Clinton can do. Clinton could issue an executive order immediately saying that international aid won't be subject to the Hyde Amendment restrictions on counseling women, around abortion. She could do that right on day one. So there's, I mean, we can have her, put people in charge of Treasury who are from the Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren wing of our party. There's any number of things that she can do right off that you want to guarantee. You could also put in your prenup, Katie, I was trying to think of what the hashtag for the Katie Hillary wedding was going to be.
Yeah.
But you could also have her, pull out of the TPP on day one, like Donald Trump has asked her to do, which would be, and put that to rest, whether, so that there's not cosmetic changes made to that trade agreement that would give her the license to approve it. So, there's a lot of things like that. Maybe that's a good thing to put out to your listeners to submit. What do they want Clinton to do in the first 100 days to prove she's going to be for real?
Yeah.
And we should be behind her.
It'll be date night activities. You just put out a lot of date night Great date night activities.
Yeah.
Tonight, what are we going to do, Hillary? We're going to pull out the TPP. Tomorrow, what are we going to do, Hillary? Well, I'm going to go out and issue this executive order.
Yeah, just because we're married now doesn't mean that you can't give me some romance.
Yeah, exactly.
I need the TPP.
Exactly. Killed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's smother it together.
Yeah,
Let's put the TPP in a burlap sack and put it in a full bathtub.
Because what's more romantic than that?
Yes.
Poor Becky. She's not going to want to be on the same radio show.
No, I'm okay with it. Now you're the one that's in the couple
Right.
with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
I find it really funny. It was just when it was me, I just became quite uncomfortable.
I get it. We get it. No, it's not. I'll take one for the team in this parallel universe involving Hillary Clinton marriage. Well, yeah, or it could be like instead of, don't women like it when like their partners or men like it when their partners go out and hunt, like it's supposed to be sexy. It doesn't do anything for me, obviously. But so we could be like, will you go and kill that TPP for me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just set some bear traps.
Exactly.
For that TPP.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's what it's going to take. It's going to take worked up people to make this democracy work.
Yes. Table. There's pavement pounding people, but Becky's also table pounding.
She's mad as hell.
She's mad as hell. She's not going to take it anymore. And Katie Halper is going to wifey up with Hillary.
That's right. It's cuffing season.
It's cuffing season. Yeah. Well, Becky, thanks again, and we'll have you soon, right at when your book is hot off the presses.
Perfect. Great. I'm looking forward to it. And thanks for keeping this conversation going. It's a really important one. And we need conversations, like this because we can't find it, in the mainstream media. And these are things that we need to talk about so that we can, both laugh but also plan together, right, for how we're going to continue to make change.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Becky.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That was great.
So fun.
So fun,
fruitful
right?
discussion.
Love her. Now we are so excited to talk to David Dayen, who is the author of Chain of Title, How Three Ordinary Americans Uncovered Wall Street's Great Foreclosure Fraud. And that was the winner of the Ida and Studs Terkel Prize. David's a contributing writer to Salon and The Intercept and a weekly columnist for The New Republic and The Fiscal Times. His writing also appears in Vice, The American Prospect, Naked Capitalism, In These Times, and more, and he lives in Los Angeles. David, welcome.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for coming on. You're making your Katie Halper Show debut.
I am. Look at that.
Look at that. We've been talking about it for so long. It's finally happening. You are a very prolific writer, and one of your recent pieces is about AT&T.
Yeah.
And you wrote this for the Fiscal Times. It's called Hillary Clinton Will Have a Big Choice to Make on the AT&T Time Warner Deal. Now, I have to admit, I don't really understand this, but I know that HBO is involved, and I like a lot of HBO programs.
Westworld.
Yeah, there's your hook.
Yeah, there's the hook.
So, yeah, so
explain this to me like I'm a low information voter, high information HBO fan.
I'm going to break it down.
Yes.
Time Warner is the parent company that owns HBO. They own most of the Turner broadcasting networks, PBS, TNT, CNN, Cartoon Network, Adult Swim. They own Warner Brothers Studios. They own DC Comics. It's a large media conglomerate. And AT&T, as we know, is a phone, wireless, broadband distributor. So AT&T has announced that they wish to purchase Time Warner for about $85 billion. And this would create a company that both owns the content that gets distributed and the pipes through which that content gets distributed, right? Mm-hmm. So if you want to watch HBO, you can watch it on DirecTV, for example, which AT&T owns. If you want to watch HBO, you can watch it on AT&T's smaller Uverse broadband internet channel, which some people get their cable through AT&T Uverse, for example. Mm-hmm. So this is they call this a vertical combination as opposed to horizontal. Horizontal would be if the company that owned HBO was buying the company that owned
Showtime,
the History Channel, or Showtime, or whatever. That would be horizontal. Vertical is they're doing pieces of the supply chain. And so what is the advantage for AT&T to do that? Well, they would have the ability. They don't have that many competitors, but there's Comcast, there's Verizon. In terms of competitors for distributing television content, they can say, all right, well, now we own HBO and all these other places. You, Comcast, if you want to provide HBO programming on your cable network, your provider, you have to pay us more. Or we will put the channels that we prefer in a better channel placement. These aren't really theoretical. Comcast did all this after they bought NBC Universal. That merger was allowed to go through 5 years ago with conditions, but many of those conditions were not followed. For example, the Bloomberg channel was put in Comcast channel lineups in a completely different area that was hard to find. And the CNBC channel was put in a neighborhood with all the other cable news channels. This has a material impact on who gets to see that channel. That's just one example. Right. And there are many, many others. So there have been a lot of people immediately coming out and saying this is problematic. In the United States, we have two different regulatory agencies, both the Federal Trade Commission and the Antitrust Division of the Justice Department, that get to look at mergers and acquisitions like this and decide whether or not they should be allowed to go forward, or decide if they want to sue to block those mergers.
That sounds like big government.
Addition, yeah.
That sounds like too much oversight.
Yeah. Big brother, big government.
Yeah, that is big government. Well, what it's trying to do is ensure competition in the private marketplace. This is government trying to set up some rules. Franklin Roosevelt, when he put his antitrust people in place, said that this kind of regulation is the least regulation that corporations should expect. What they're trying to regulate is that there are competitors in the marketplace. They're trying to ensure that the structures of commerce can work their will, rather than having 2 or 3 large players at the top stifling competition from everybody else. So that's the idea behind antitrust, and we've had that in place for over 100 years in America, since going back to Teddy Roosevelt.
Is there a counter argument to that, though? What's the counter to what vertical integration? Doesn't that just lead to efficiency? I mean, when we look at any other cartels...
That is the counter. The counter is that, and this has been sort of over the last 30, 35 years, the counter is that, well, when these companies combine, it means more efficiency and lower prices for you, the consumer. However, if you do actual studies of what happens after a merger, it shows that the market power that is derived from becoming a big player in the market usually leads to increases in prices, not decreases. So the Justice Department is going to have to weigh all that. The Federal Communications Commission may be able to weigh in here as well, because it's a media merger. And there are also sort of political implications to this. And implications for the news media. Look, CNN is one of the larger cable networks, and imagine a scenario where they're owned by AT&T, and there's a situation with whether it's under surveillance or whether it's under a labor dispute with AT&T. Are they more inclined or less inclined to report on that particular subject if it involves their own parent company? These are the problems with media consolidation that we've heard for years and years, that if you have these large conglomerates that are the communication engines for the entire country, they're going to shade for or against certain topics relative to what their personal financial incentives are.
My mind is being blown right now. I'm being told that journalists are not objective and that their news division is not independent from the mother company. Is that what you're saying right now?
It's a good thing Gabe is sitting down.
Because thank God I'm sitting down, and thank God we have a Patreon account. Because
good plug, because we are independent, and you can go to Patreon, The Katie Halper Show, patreon.com.
We'll just keep giving you that truth as long as long as we're independently sponsored.
We're going to give you that story about AT&T labor dispute. We're going to bring you that story that CNN won't. David, are there any examples of that have already happened in terms of, like, I mean, I'm sure there are, but in terms of a company not reporting, whatever channel, network not reporting on something?
Sure. I mean, the most famous one is probably GE, which refused for years to admit that they were dumping PCBs into the Hudson River and never really that was never a function of NBC News. That was never something they reported on for years and years and years. You could talk about the famous New York Times story about the operatives from the Pentagon that would report as independent political analysts on all of the major broadcast networks. That was a Pulitzer Prize-winning story from the New York Times that the networks never picked up because it wasn't in their interest to do so. Very little was talked about trade on broadcast television, cable television, because the large media conglomerates had an interest in the Trans-Pacific Partnership passing because there were a lot of goodies for intellectual property holders. In other words, holders of media content, copyrights on television and film rights. So we see this time and time again, the shading of the news to relative to corporate interests.
That's some shady shading.
More consolidation just means more of that.
How do we to combat that? It seems like we're outgunned if you're looking for independent news. If the corporations have this megaphone, and it seems like they already have a pretty strong stranglehold on information.
That's absolutely true. But it's kind of like the first do no harm principle. I mean, we don't want to make that worse, right? And so one way to do that is to stop these continuing conglomerations such that you've consolidated and concentrated the marketplace even more and more and more. After we get through with that, there's certainly the ability. I mean, AT&T, it wasn't so long ago, it was called Bell Telephone, and the government actually broke them up into little pieces. Over the last 30 years since that happened, AT&T has basically reconstituted itself with all those little bells.
Tinkerbells.
Almost all of them are part of the AT&T network now.
So it's like blowing up
the ability. Government has the ability to break up these companies if they wanted to, if they had the will, and ensure that there is some competition, which would be better for consumers, which would be better for news readers and news consumers as well in the marketplace.
And it looks like, so you see this, David, as kind of a test for Hillary Clinton, right? You say
absolutely,
yeah. So
absolutely, because it's going to be up to her appointees at the Justice Department on whether or not they're going to wave this through or they're going to block it.
Right. So you write in your article, so if Clinton wins in 2 weeks as expected, she has a big choice to make. Those who have reinvigorated interest in antitrust policy after decades of dormancy will demand rejection of this deal. It consolidates economic and political power, threatens rising prices and regulatory rollback, and further concentrates a media telecom landscape with just a few behemoths. Even economists now admit that the assumption that mergers make companies more efficient was wrong. So she has this chance to do that. And what's interesting is that, not surprisingly, Bernie Sanders is against the deal because he says it would mean higher prices and fewer choices. And Al Franken is against it, too, because he says it could have a lasting effect on the quality and affordability of programming. And he should know because he used to write for and be on Saturday Night Live. But what's very interesting is that Donald Trump is against it because it says because it's too much.
He hates CNN,
right?
Basically.
Because he hates CNN, so he becomes this like Chomskyan. It's pretty funny. He says it's too much concentration of power in the hands of too few. All of a sudden, Donald Trump is like a media literacy advocate.
However you get there, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Woke Trump. We have.
But yes, it is interesting that we are seeing more interest in both parties around this idea that there has been too much of a concentration of economic power and political power at the very top. And, Clinton is coming into office or could come into office at a time when that is a major factor for people. And they're really looking to see whether or not a new administration will head to the forefront on this. I mean, even Obama's last few years, he has gotten interested in this issue, and they put out an executive order to maximize competition within the marketplace. They have stopped a couple of mergers, including the merger proposed between AT&T and T-Mobile. They stopped a merger between Comcast and Time Warner Cable, which weirdly is a different company than Time Warner. So I don't really want to get into it, but so there has been some scrutiny paid to these media consolidations, and Clinton's either going to push that even further by stopping one that is a content distribution play like this AT&T Time Warner is, or they're going to just let it go. And I think it's a major test.
So why does someone who likes Game of Thrones care about this? Pitch it to, because that's a huge HBO show, right? Game of Thrones.
Absolutely. Right. So the reason you care about this is that you don't want to see your cable choices threatened or your price go up just because you don't happen to have an AT&T availability. You don't want to see, you might get that on HBO Now, which is their online service, their streaming service. If you don't have HBO on your cable, you can buy that separately. And AT&T, which has a competing service, might just end HBO Now and put it into their other service where you have to buy 100 other channels and pay a lot more a month. This could have a definitive effect as we figure out, the way in which people are watching programming is changing, whether it's online, whether it's on cable, and having just one or two or three big players make that determination is not likely to be a good thing for consumers. And so I think that you want to see that the government is taking care to make sure that there are more voices in that conversation.
Right. So both for because when it's a monopoly, they can jack up the prices and there's no competition, and because they can make
and
things.
We saw that, by the way. AT&T, when they bought DirecTV, almost immediately prices went up.
You see, guys.
So this is not theoretical. This is what's going to happen.
This is
and because people who want HBO might not have an AT&T or DirecTV service. It matters not just to users of AT&T and DirecTV. It could matter to everyone because they could say, "Oh, you want HBO now? Your subscribers have to pay $20 a month instead of $15, or they have to pay $30 instead of $20, or whatever it is."
So basically, if you enjoy television and enjoy not being fleeced, you gotta tell Hillary Clinton, to oppose this deal.
Absolutely.
It's always cool when there's something that's politically righteous that also coincides with
dragons.
With dragons, yeah. If only we could stick all of political issues to fantasy worlds, or in my case, the night of, right? That's HBO.
Yeah.
So if only we could attach political change to, PTSD inducing,
Such a stressful show.
So maybe we should stick to Game of Thrones. And David, you've written so many pieces, but you have another piece that's really fascinating, which is at the New Republic and it says the most important WikiLeaks revelation isn't about Hillary Clinton. So whom is it about, or about whom is it?
Well, it's about Barack Obama.
What?
And yes, John Podesta, prior to being Hillary Clinton's campaign aide, back in 2008, he ran the transition for President-elect Obama. Now, what do I mean by transition? There's a process by which the two major leading presidential candidates transition from being candidates to being the president-elect to being the president, and that process begins well before the election. So right now, in Washington, both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have large staffs that are looking at the transition and figuring out the 4,000 people that they have to hire for a new administration, all these political appointees. And you can't just start that at the day after the election. You have to prop that up well beforehand.
Right.
So Podesta was the co-chair of this for Obama in 2008. And there are a lot of these WikiLeaks emails around the 2008 transition, including this one that I found, which is an email from Michael Froman, who was in charge of hiring in the Obama transition. He also was working at Citigroup at the time. He also now is the U.S. trade representative who put together the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So this is a pretty important figure in the last several years. So Froman gives Podesta these lists, and they're lists of potential cabinet appointments. Now, the important thing to look at on this email is the date. It's October 6th, 2008. This is a month before the election. And this list of potential cabinet appointments is almost entirely dead on. It gets the Health and Human Services Director, it gets the Chief of Staff, it gets the Labor Department, the Commerce Department, all of these different positions it gets correctly. This prediction, it's not really a prediction because it's coming from the guy who's doing the hiring.
Right.
And the range of choices that Michael Froman gives on the Treasury Department is Robert Rubin, Larry Summers, and Timothy Geithner.
Oh, those were like the three guys that caused the financial meltdown, right?
Yeah.
They ran the gamut from a Rubinite to an actual protege of a Rubinite. So it was a wide range of voices that they offered as an option here.
Well, they could have also just offered the guy from Monopoly. In all fairness, it could have been worse.
Yeah, right. They could have. That would have been a little bit more narrow, I guess.
Yeah, or just a fat cat, like a literal cat that's fat.
So why is this important? Well, it's important because here we have a guy who was on Citigroup's payroll who was in his spare time choosing the cabinet, and his predictions panned out almost entirely, and this happened well before the election. This was, I put that piece out around a couple weeks ago at a time where any criticism of Hillary Clinton, any scrutiny into these emails or any scrutiny into her background was seen as, oh, you're trying to elect Donald Trump.
Right.
And the point that I was making was that this is the time when the actual decisions that will govern the next 4 years in terms of personnel, which, as Elizabeth Warren has said all this election, personnel is policy, this is the time when those decisions are being made. And in 2008, progressives were so starry-eyed about Obama that they neglected that entirely. They had no kind of connection to what was going on with the transition. And predictably, we ended up getting the same Geithner-Summers wing of the party running economic policy. This time around, there has been more attention paid to the transition. However, that was a time in where the eye was coming off the ball. And the reason I wrote that is to say that these decisions are happening right now, and there are groups that are working like heck to make sure that there is, a real team of rivals in the White House, in the next White House. In 2008, that book Team of Rivals came out, which was about Lincoln's cabinet and how they were adversaries, and he put them in a room together and tried to make them hash things out. And they claim that Obama is doing a team of rivals, and the only reason for this was because he picked Hillary Clinton to be in the State Department when he ran against her. But ideologically, there were no rivals in the Obama cabinet.
Well,
they were all pretty much on board.
Although Hillary and Robert Gates would side together against other people because they were more hawkish.
Well, that is true. That is true. I'm talking largely in terms of economic policy.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. But point being that Hillary has talked about her cabinet wanting to make her cabinet the most diverse ever. But diversity isn't just race and gender. It needs to be on a range of views. It needs to be a diversity of viewpoint.
No.
It needs to be diversity of thought.
Wrong.
It's entirely
racist,
about that's ageist, that's racist,
ableist.
That's ableist. Basically, everyone just has to be a different size in the room and a different shade.
And then and all neoliberal.
Gender.
I want a rainbow of neoliberalism.
But we're all just disruptive innovators and entrepreneurs.
Leaning in.
That's it.
What else are we doing? We're thinking outside the box. What are the other things? Leaning in. Picking someone's brain? No, that's a little different.
I don't know, but we are all disruptive innovators.
Leaning in literally, because Sheryl Sandberg herself has been prepped as a possible Treasury Secretary pick. People don't seem to remember that Sheryl Sandberg was the chief of staff to Larry Summers at the Treasury Department under the Clinton administration.
See, that's beautiful. We got see, this is woke neoliberalism in a nutshell. We had a straight white man before, then we had one of the straight white male proteges. But you know what's possible now? We may have a straight white female.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
How about that?
Incrementalism,
yeah. I noticed, by the way, that they did divvy up the list. Well, the document, the WikiLeaks document that you found has attachments that are sent from Fromer to Podesta, and they have it actually organized as African Americans, women, disabled. So
yes. Well, the entire point of that Froman email was to try to hit a diversity score within the Obama cabinet.
Binders, just binders full of minorities.
Yeah.
It was a literal binder full of women.
Yeah, and black people and disabled people. It's a binder for all shapes and colors. Well, David, thank you so much for coming on the Katie Halper Show. And everyone has to buy his book, Chain of Title, and follow him on the Twitters. What's your Twitter name again? I follow you, but
at Dayen, Dayen, and then the other way so you don't have to go to every single place where I write and figure out whether I've written something that day. I send an email newsletter every week, twice a week actually, with links to every one of my stories and a little bit of something extra. So
how do they get
go
that?
to tinyletter.com, that's one word, tinyletter.com/David Dayen, DAVID, and you can sign up for the newsletter and you'll get it in your email inbox.
Awesome. We're going to start doing that at the Katie Halper Show, thanks to the Patreon
there you go.
campaign we're doing. Well, thank you so much, and we will have you on, and let us know when you're in New York. We'd love to have you in the studio.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye, David.
Bye.
Bye. That was a great show. Great show. Love
rich,
it. Rich.
Just full of information.
Full of information. We got Hillary Clinton, I hope you're listening to this, because you could take a lot of info from here and become a successful candidate, nominee, actual president, marry me. Have a 4-year relationship, 4-year plus maybe. And anything else? Make sure you go to Patreon.
Yeah, we've got some people
donors,
who are subscribed, some donors. So thank you so much. Every little bit
we love
counts,
you,
and it keeps us independent and on the air. And we love you guys for it.
Yeah, because if you don't do that, you know what happens. You got a bunch of basically support us or lose HBO forever. That's a good way to put it. Okay, we will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.